world-class vision, world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday Late Show with Hannah Wilson and myself, Lucy Newberger. We are going to be talking about interviews this evening, the good, the bad, and the downright horrifying. I always think this is an interesting topic, particularly for you, Hannah, because I know you kind of sat on both sides of this, and I know you kind of alluded to it before. So I'm very intrigued this evening to get stuck in. And as always, you can get in touch with us live and share along with us. And any stories, any comments that you would like to share, please do. But before we get into all that, Hannah, how are you doing? How's your week going?
What an eventful day I've had. I had a call from my son's school. He tripped over and banged his head, and luckily he was at the school next door and I was on a free period, so I literally ran past the person I was meant to be meeting and was like, oh, my son's injured, I'll be back. Ran around the corner to the school next door. I thought it was just literally going to be the phone call of, he's bumped his head, we have to call you because it's a head injury. I'm like, yeah, no worries, leave him there. But they're like, no, there's blood, you need to come. So I went and checked on him thinking it wouldn't be that bad, to literally find blood gushing out of his head and what looked like down his shoulder as well, but actually it was another graze on the shoulder, and the white t-shirt was not doing it any favors. So then I was like, I didn't bring my car. I panicked. So I had to run back to school and get my car and drive around and take him to the hospital. Luckily, they're all in a row. So I've got my school, my son's school, and then minor injuries unit next door. So I ran him down to the minor injuries unit, and we were the only people there. So he was seen really quickly. And then the other end of the loop is my grandma's. So I then dumped him at grandma's, said my farewell. So I left him in front of the telly with her and ran back and taught my class. So an eventful day. Quite glad to sit down now.
Lesser people would have stayed at grandma's and just, had a cup of tea, but not Hannah Wilson. No, Hannah Wilson does it all and then goes back to work like the absolute hero that she is. So
I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Why did I not just go, my child's got a head injury, I'm off, and go home? I'm like, I'll be back, it's fine.
Eating biscuits with grandma. Not that an excuse like that is the great reason to do it, but yeah, I mean, I say lesser people. I think many people would have been like, I'm here now. TV's on, kettle's boiled.
Yeah, most people wouldn't have even tagged in grandma. They'd have just. But that's the thing. My mum's a teacher, as those of you may well know who have heard her on many of my shows. Teaching in the Family. If you want to go back through and have a listen to them, are some corkers. But yeah, so I think it's that whole like we're all used to it. We know what teaching involves and how it's harder to be off than it is to be in.
Oh. I am still in cover teacher mode, so I'm sort of everything to everyone. Although I did get to hang out with one of my ex-colleagues from the other school who's now at this school, and so I got to hang out with his year one class today, and I normally don't hang out with year one, so that was quite nice. And then
you back in primary, you're away from the secondaries.
Well, I'm kind of I'm still in and out of both, but I'm more in primary now, which I'm quite relieved about. Because it's just much more my jam. It really is. It's just, I speak that language. I mean, do I speak teenager? I don't think I do. Like some things I can have a bit of a banter with them with, and other things I'm just like, crikey, am I really that old? Is that like, yeah. And all their birth years start with a 2 and it just angers me. And their skin's still bouncy and lovely and there's not a hint of a wrinkle. And I don't know why I'm saying I'm jealous of 13-year-old skin because that's just ridiculous. But
I joined a friend on duty and they were taking the mickey out of her for being so old at 29. And I was like, oh my God, if only you guys knew my age. I'm going to exit this conversation now before you find out I'm a decade older than that.
Yeah, and just cry in the
Back
bathroom.
away, back away.
Away, yeah. And also, never forget how absolutely humbling children can be of any age, to be honest. Whether it's kind of whatever it is, they will notice a blemish, that maybe you're slightly puffy in the face, whatever it is. They'll and particularly the little ones who just have no filter, which I love them for, but also no. Also, you're 5. Shh. So, before we move on, I just realised we've got to do our other life admin and talk about our lovely sponsors. We still have John Catt Educational, and we love having them. Oh, can you point the right way? Yes, nailed it. So proud. It's only taken us goodness knows how many shows, and I'm glad it's Hannah doing the pointing and the what have you, because I would get it very wrong. But anyway, I digress. John Catt Educational, we still have a discount code for them, which is JCTTR2425, and that gets you 20% off everything on the John Catt website. Buy yourself an early Halloween present. Is that a thing? I don't know. I'm running out of excuses. Oh, we're kind of halfway through. We're kind of halfway to half term, or maybe a little bit more than halfway to half term at this point. So, by the time you order it, by the time it gets to you, you'll have your half term reading. So maybe that's the excuse I'm going to use this time to make use of this discount code. So it is there for you, JCTTR2425. Our other delightful sponsors at the moment, keeping along the reading theme, are Reading Solutions. And they are... Ooh, I need the banner, Hannah, because I haven't actually got the script with me for once. We can tell we're running a very, very tight show this evening. There we go. The home of Dreambox. That's what I was trying to think of. Dreambox Reading Plus. And it is the online development program that creates strong readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to GCSE and beyond. And if you Google Reading Solutions, it will direct you to their website, and you can have a go at their pilot and just have a look through everything there. So that is who we've got sponsoring us at the moment, which is delightful. Anyway, I think I'm getting overexcited because I want to get into the nitty gritty of this show this evening. Now, the teacher interview is, and I'm sure, Hannah, you've got plenty to share on this, is one of those things that from when I was trying to land my first job up until, I haven't done it for a while. I haven't done it for 4 years. I tell a lie. I sort of interviewed for the job I've got, so temporary job I've got now, but I'm not going to count it because half the old staff are staff from my previous school who know me very well. So yeah, I've had some brilliant interviews and I've had some absolutely terrible ones. But I think before we get into into story time, we know that the role of a teacher is complex, it's multifaceted, it varies according to where your school is. I often think that when you know if a school fits, it's kind of like buying a house. Not that I've ever bought a house, but people tell me like this, you have to go in and get a feel for it. And when it comes to kind of tips and tricks for interviews, this is one that I would strongly recommend off the bat. Go and see the school before you even consider. You might kind of have already applied for the interview. It's kind of difficult to know what order to do these things in, but somewhere between, booking the interview, going for the interview, go and have a look. Make time to allow you to go around the school, because otherwise I just think it's a bad idea not to. But before we delve into sort of all of this, in terms of a teaching interview, what should it entail, Hannah? Because again, when we get into story time, I can absolutely wax lyrical, go on ad nauseum about the positives and the negatives. But in your mind, if you were going for a teaching job, what would be the kinds of things you'd be expecting to experience, to go through?
I'm going to go back to your other point about visiting the school. I'm quite naughty in the fact I have such fear in letting people down that I find it really uncomfortable to ask to go have a day out to go look at another school that I'm going to apply for that I don't even know whether I'm going to get an interview for, and let the school that I'm currently at know that I'm looking at other jobs, and thus maybe change the dynamic of how they look at me in the school. But I don't know, that's my anxiety, that I find that situation really difficult. So I do kind of like to wait to know whether I've got an interview. But sometimes that turnaround between application and interview means that it's not possible. Or then I have the guilt of, if the only time I could go might hit a key stage 4 group, and then I feel guilty that I'm letting those kids down by not being there and teaching the lesson to go and do that. So I know it's such an important part of going to a school and going and seeing and going having a look around, but I also find it one of the most awkward parts of it in terms of asking your school to go.
But I think this is, again, and maybe this is something we'll sort of repeatedly come back to, because I think I think this is a running theme for a lot of people, and I'm sure those listening in will be nodding along, because there is that sense, and I don't know any other profession like it, where the guilt attached in, you may or may not, you may have come to the decision, right? Okay, for whatever reason, and let's just say people leave schools all the time. Particularly where I am in the international system, the turnover is ridiculous. People move on, circumstances change, or you're in hell and you want to move. There are many, many reasons. But the guilt associated, as you say, with not only kind of having to inform this, because the school will know you're looking, this is the thing, because they have to be asked for references and all of that stuff. So there's that. There's then kind of going to your management and, if you land an interview, asking for that time, which depending on your relationship with them can kind of come with questions and what have you. Then taking the time itself, and then kind of, if it goes great. If it doesn't, then it's almost that kind of going back with your tail between your legs and, do you go again? Do you not go again? Were you just putting the feelers out? Does it then mean on the back of that you're going to get treated differently? And it's, I think that just getting to that interview process alone is quite tricky and does come, I think you were right to address it. There's a lot of pitfalls with that, and maybe something that needs addressing, because people move on, people's lives change, and there shouldn't be any shame attached to, or conditions rather attached to, wanting to move on for whatever reason.
And I suppose that says maybe more about the schools that I've been in, that I have the fear of how they're then going to treat me after, if they know that I'm looking at other schools. But I guess, but that's, I find that quite an interesting point, like we'll swing around. In terms of like what you said before about what I think an interview should entail, obviously a school tour needs to be happening as the school's kind of in place. I think a lesson should happen. I'm a bit like, I feel like it should be a whole hour, because by the time you've got the kids in, or 50 minutes if you lessons for 50 minutes, because you've probably, by the time the kids have got in, had the register done, all set up, you've got your resources, and then you're teaching, you're probably only teaching 45 minutes. I want to see how a teacher is interacting. I mean, my last interview I went for, they split us and we were going to have 20 minutes each. But by the time they got the class in, the other teacher overran, and then they brought her back to where I was before taking me down to the class. I had 10 minutes to teach my lesson. Granted, I'm incredible, so I got the job anyway. But I'm just like, I'm like, do you want me to? They're like, the bell's gone, they're going to have to go. I'm like, do you, like, I mean, it's into break, I know your type. Like, do you not want them to stay and finish my amazing lesson? They're like, no, we did enough. It's fine. Just let them go. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I don't feel like that 10 minutes was the best representation of myself. But I guess there is, like, you get a feeling, by the spiel that somebody's saying as to whether they know their field or not. But I definitely think, like, there should be a lesson tour, and I think they should do it high up as well, because SLT generally do teach, and they're teaching more than they used to. I'd love to see them in action and actually see what they're made of, because quite often these things are like taken out when they just creep back up. I think the other things I love Now I know this is controversial because I know Tom's done one years ago, didn't he, about like what things need to go 101 of interviews. I love a student panel. I absolutely adore it. I love having the opportunity to talk to students. I love the what kind of biscuit question are you going to be? I had some great ones on my last interview where they asked me like who inspired me, what do I like to do in my spare time? And obviously I just podcast geeked, so I just went like, oh well, I have a podcast in my spare time and I do this. And then I was like, I think I ended up going down the shark route quite a lot because I was like, well, Bethany Hamilton, like she had lost an arm, but she's still a massive shark advocate and still says she doesn't let it put her off. It's all about resilience. And I think that, yeah, that was like, what would you, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? And I was like, well, I'd go dive with sharks. Like, I think I thought I was absolutely bonkers. But actually, I think seeing how the kids represent themselves and seeing like they're the cream of the crop that they're giving you in that kind of student voice. So it's like you get to see those gems that you can work with and really what shine the really lovely bits and see how they are, how they talk to you. I think they're quite important bits.
It also humanizes you though as well.
Yeah. And like generally when I've interviewed, they're the ones that people have told me I've done best. Like when other people have sat in them, they're like, oh yeah, you get the most interesting answers that we've had all day in there. But that's also my thing, is that I get really great results because I have this ability to just connect to kids. I can quickly from a conversation feed off something that they're interested in and flip it and I build relationships really quickly. It's just what makes me good at what I do. But yeah, I think I would miss that if that wasn't in there, because I think that shows that skill. And actually, if people are too stiff and can't answer a kid's question and can't engage with kids and can't have a bit of a laugh with themselves as well, then that says a lot about kind of who they are and how they come across. But I don't know, like, and as a middle leader, there's quite often like some kind of data task. When I've gone for SLT interviews, I've had data task. And actually, as somebody that's doing a master's and completed my level 7 PG dip in senior leadership, with executive heads doing the same course, but every school's data, the way they read it is so different. I've gone into some of them and been like, I can't read this at all. I can't make heads nor tails of it. But yeah, I know my data for my classes so well. I can know exactly which kids are where. I know exactly where my little margins are that I can, if I just focus on that kid, I can make a massive gain in my Progress 8 scores. Like, I understand all that. But actually reading another school's data that isn't displayed in the same way can really hinder somebody when actually they've got really good skills in that, if it's not done in a really good way, I don't think.
And it's kind of it's almost very abstract, isn't it? Because again, if you don't know the school particularly well, it's a different area, or you're not quite familiar with the sort of the makeup in terms of the community itself, it can be a tricky one. I want to come back to so I mean, Hannah, the way you're sort of framing this to me, you're looking at kind of taking out a good half day here for an interview at least. So you're talking, an hour lesson, which I do think fair enough, because actually on consideration, because I was thinking while you were talking, teaching for 15 or 20 minutes, what do you achieve in that time? I mean, what do you're doing a standalone lesson as is, which is a nightmare to begin with. But to only have 15 or 20 minutes, as you say, you're not going to achieve anything in that time. So certainly, a lesson period, whether that is an hour or 45 minutes, I do think is, of course, it's difficult in terms of timetabling and all the rest of it. But I think, if you're being hired for a teaching job, then this is kind of your bread and butter, really. It's sort of should be the main crux of it. So you're doing that. You want your student panel as well. Do you want, I mean, I'm guessing that within this there is a I was about to say grown-up interview. That sounds so ridiculous. It's not what I mean at all.
The adult interview, it's fine.
The management interview. But
I'm going to be a little bit controversial in the fact that I've been obviously part of the process and been on the other side. I do think if you can do the student panel, sometimes I've been in like staff panels, and I quite like staff panels because then you actually get a feel of what the staff like. Are they frosty or are they welcoming? Like I feel like that's quite a big one, but doesn't happen very often.
Every time.
Yeah, and then I think I've had it that I've obviously done the tour of the school, taught my lesson, had a student panel, had a task, and then we've had lunch, and they've sent a load of people, half of the people home at lunch, and then you get the interview after lunch. And I think personally, I was a bit like, oh my gosh, that's brutal. But actually being on the other side and seeing it, like, yeah, you know quite quickly the ones that you're not going to hire, and why would you waste everyone's day? And why wouldn't you? If you get an abundance of candidates, that's beautiful. If you can kind of interview like 6 and cut it down to 3 after lunch, I think that's kind of an adequate kind of thing to do. If there is but I do think also you've got to be flexible. Actually, if every candidate's on par, then you've got to give them that opportunity to kind of have that conversation. But I don't like a schedule where it kind of rotates round. Like one person would have their interview first while somebody else is teaching and somebody else is doing this. Like I'd much rather everyone have taught the lessons, and then when you have the interview, you can ask them how they felt their lesson went. So they can ask like, and that way, like if there is, because we're all human, we all make mistakes, we all don't have perfect lessons. But if you're well aware of it and you can be like, I did really enjoy that lesson. This bit didn't go as well as I thought it should. This I would have rather changed and done this. Had it been my own class, I would have stopped and changed it to this. And I think that just shows somebody that can be really reflective and that's really self-aware. Whereas if you have that kind of interview schedule where you're interviewing and then somebody else is doing lesson and somebody else lesson, you don't get that opportunity. And I think that's a shame if that's taken out.
So we've already got a lot going on here, and it's difficult to know, because I do think all of these things have a purpose. Certainly the teaching of the lessons, certainly the verbal interview. Student panel, I like the idea of, but I can take it or leave it. Going tasks is the one that I do take issue with, and I'm going to kind of come into story time a little bit here. If the task is relevant to the job, then okay, I still don't know. I think these are things that you can kind of, there are other ways of proving you can do these things. I had a task where I had something like 15 minutes, it might have even been a bit longer than that, I can't remember, this was a while ago, to plan a lesson from scratch for I can't even remember the age of the class, and here's the book. Of course I failed it miserably failed it, because
I've had a task which has been to plan a scheme of work and write a scheme of work for a term for this X year on this theme.
Well, that's just trying to cheat the system. They're just trying to kind of...
Yeah, I'm like, you've got like 8 of us here. What, are you going to get 8 lots of schemes of work? I'm like, I had my USB in my bag. I was on that shit. Plug that straight in.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not sitting here making a whole brand new scheme of work in an interview. No, thank you.
How long did they give you for that, just out of interest?
I can't remember. It was a weird day where we had quite long bits, but those bits were timed. I think we were given kind of like 45 minutes to do it. But that was such a weird day because they were interviewing. It was a new school and we had lots of subjects all interviewing on the same day. Like there was a point where I think there was like a 3-hour gap in one guy's schedule, so he popped out and went to the shops and had lunch and then came back again. It was just the bizarrest day, the way it was set up. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't let people have really big gaps, but I also think a gap at some point of like 20 minutes, half an hour, so it's not like bang 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 bang, that they get a moment to catch their breath, decompress. I think I really like the schools that set you up in the staff room, that you actually get to sit in there and experience it and bump into staff. I don't particularly like it when I've been put in a meeting room and kept separate to the rest of the school. I think it shows confidence to a school if they put you in the staff room in between calling you for things. if that's possible. It depends on the school setup, but I think actually being able to sit in a staff room and staff being able to go, oh, hello, how are you? Like, basically they mostly come in for the biscuits because they get whipped out, don't they, on those days? Yeah, if there's not a good spread, if the lunch is shit, don't go for it. Run.
Yes, school food.
Judge them on their sandwiches.
Oh yeah, and whether they use plunger coffee or it's the instant crap. Because I'm going to make a terrible confession that's nothing to do with what we're talking about, but instant coffee is the devil's wee-wee as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I don't need caffeine, Lucy. I don't drink.
What? None at all?
This madness is all natural.
Once again, you become my hero more and more as we do this, and I'm like, I don't know how you do it. Anyway, apart from Hannah hero worship, what was my next point? I can't remember. So we're in this interview hellscape, and silly tasks. Yeah, the planning a lesson in 15 minutes with no kind of guidance as to who the class was, what the makeup of the class was, whether there was a teaching assistant or not. And yeah, I panicked. I also had to another ridiculous one, which will haunt me to this day, which I think might have been the same interview. Provide detailed written feedback on a child's work. Detailed written feedback. It'd clearly been written by like a year 2, maybe a year 3. And so the content was lovely. I think it was about a caterpillar. I can't remember. But I was like, this is nonsense. And this was when I was an NQT, ECT, or trying to find my first job. And I remember leaving that interview in tears because I was, again, kicked out partway through. And it's very demoralizing. But then again, it has become, it's interesting because it has become more cutthroat, yet we're in a recruitment and retention crisis.
That's the thing. I don't think there's as much kindness in interviews as there used to be. I think it is a case of being respectful to the people that have given up their time, and things like that. And I've had one where I applied for it and we had a whole day and it was really long. We'd had lots of tasks and presentations to create and present on the day that has taken hours. The application itself took hours to fill in. And then we got an automated email to tell us that we'd been unsuccessful. So to not even pick up the phone and say, I'm really sorry, we've gone with another candidate, which was fine because actually the person who got it was my friend. And I was like, well, if I don't get it, I bloody well hope they do because I love them and they deserve it. Like, they're such an amazing teacher. Like, at least one of us art teachers are going into SLT. If it's not me, it needs to be her. But it's just like, but to have literally, and there was another friend there as well that we all rocked up and went, well, this will be fun. Like literally 3 of us all knew each other. No, actually, there was another person that we knew of as well. So there was like 4 of us out of the 6 that all knew each other. So we had a good chat in the staff room. It was great. But it was, I was like, we gave up so many hours on top of teaching like a full timetable, like, and writing all that cover. Like, I mean, like the amount of hours between the application, the planning of the presentation, doing the actual interview, writing the cover, all the things I did. And it was a long day. And to literally get to tell us that they will call and let us know the end of the day. And we were all messaging and anybody heard, nobody had heard. To then literally get an automated email the next day. I'm like, I wouldn't, if I had got that job, I wouldn't want to work at that school. If that's your people skills that you think that's appropriate to send an automated response to people that have put that much time and effort into your job, in wanting your job, that is not acceptable. And I just think that, like, I was like, they were like, yeah, you can email us for some feedback. And I was like, no, I don't give, I'm swearing. Sorry, Tom, I'm tired. Don't give a crap. Like, I don't want your feedback if that's kind of how you're going to treat somebody. I would never do that.
No, I'm sorry. I agree with you. And if the feedback is not forthcoming, fudge off. I'm not interested. Like, I especially as you say, if you've given hours, and also because never mind what you actually have to do on the day a lot of the time, which is, I'm sorry, I do think large parts of it have lost the plot completely. But a lot of these jobs, certainly if you're looking on TES or anywhere like that, other job sites do exist. But I'm going to roll with that one for the moment. You have to write the equivalent of your bloody university personal statement for these schools as well. So the preamble, never mind what you actually have to do when you get there, the kind of just the sort of getting the application off in the first place, as you say, is nonsense. I mean,
yeah, I'm like very much have it in a spreadsheet, have it in a PowerPoint that you can copy and paste over. But even that takes hours, just kind of going back through. I'm old, going through my history of every job I've ever had my whole entire life and explaining all my gaps as to why I buggered off to live in nicer, warmer countries for quite a while. But it's just like, it was just like, what, like, it just takes so long to do. And I know there's lots of new things that people are using, and I definitely kind of think if you are a school, that definitely kind of I would invest in that in order to help your recruitment process, because there have been a few times that I've gone to do an application and I've been like, no, this is going to take me far too long. I don't have the will to do this. I don't want this job that badly to fill out this form. So I definitely would consider that as a school, from a school point of view. But from the other point of view, always make sure that you are reading the school site. Make sure you know what their core values are, and make sure you weave them into the personal statement, left, right, and centre, and make sure you kind of are really speaking about them personally. I mean, I do have the dread that I feel like I just change it, and I really worry that I left the last school in that I changed it to. But
I've done that before.
I'm like, please don't have. But I do think that's a really good tip. Like, don't just put a generic personal statement in.
No.
That is
Well,
just
no.
the same one that you copy and paste into every application. Make sure you are making it personable to that school, and you're actually thinking about kind of what you're writing.
But applying for jobs to be a teacher is a full-time job. I'm sorry, but it is. So to those of you doing it from inside another job, which of course many of you are, the only time you might not be is if you've taken some time off, like Muggins over here, or if you're ECT, NQT, starting your foray into your actual career. You know, it is a lot, and it does take, and you know, on the one hand, I do appreciate that it is a rigorous process, that, you know, that you do have to, that it is competitive. But I just wonder, and I don't think standards should slip, but in the current climate, I mean, you're not getting the applications in the first place. I mean, you look at any of these job sites this time of year, certainly going into Christmas and the New Year, and it is chock-a-block. It is chock-a-block with, I mean, you name it, nursery through to, you know, FE through to whatever it is, because, you know, it's as we know, we've had a PR problem for a while, for a long time. But on that note, have we already said do your research? I think we have.
Because I obviously know the Ofsted report, but like I genuinely think it's worth kind of, I like a good stalk, so I will stalk their
Sleuthing, Hannah. Let's call it sleuth.
Stalk snooping or snoop. I snoop their Twitter. I snoop their school website. I snoop the Facebook. There's a good near where I am. There's Babes with Babies, and then where I live. Which is the big city, and basically every mother in every radius of this county is in it. And quite often a lot of people go, what do people think of this school? I'm thinking of moving my kid to this school. What do people think? So I search back through all of the old ones and find the school's names and find out what all the parents are saying. And then I'll even say it in interviews. I'm like, well, from what I've heard publicly, I feel like you've got an issue with this, this, and this. So these would be the areas that I would address. So, and generally, like, because mums don't hold back, they'll tell it all. So it's kind of, I do like have a look on, you can search on LinkedIn and find out what schools, who's working there, what kind of experience they've got. Like, do your SLT research, find out how long they've been teaching, what their speciality is, where they've been at. I just like, I do like knowing my knowledge of kind of where I'm going and what I'm doing. Is there somebody in that school that is going to help me raise my game? Is there somebody in that school that I'm genuinely going to look forward to learning from? I think is quite important. But I've also had it that I was like, oh my gosh, this teacher sounds amazing, and then I've started at school and that head has left in the time that I got interviewed and they left. So it's one of those, isn't it? You've also got to imagine, like, if you can't, it's like the kids when they pick their GCSE options, like, don't pick the subject on the teacher because you like the teacher, because the teacher might not be here. You never know. You don't pick the school on the head because you never know. But I do think kind of just, especially like checking out the SLT, kind of just seeing what parents are feeling, how much do they promote the school? Because I think actually having a real positive community kind of base and are they promoting real positivity? Are they praising your high achieving students? Because that creates a culture and an atmosphere. If that's kind of missing and they're not kind of shouting from the rooftops about their kids' successes, I'm like, I don't know, but that's just my opinion. Other people might be like, well, actually, they're just concentrating on their own stuff rather than their PR image. So it swings and roundabouts with that one, really.
Yeah, and particularly, if you've got your heart set on somewhere, you can make that happen. And I'll kind of come to a story time in a little bit, but I do think also have a look. I mean, it's things I've only really kind of learned as I've sort of, got on in my career. I'm approaching a decade, and Hannah, you're even longer than that, aren't you? How long have you been doing this?
I'm unlucky for some, 13.
So a really long time. And there are certain things like if a school has multiple vacancies, you got to ask, things like that, things that you don't really want to judge them on, but you kind of have to. Again, Ofsted are not our favorite people, but as you say, that report can be, in some ways, can be quite telling.
Read between the lines on it.
Yeah, for sure. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Also, looking at staff turnover as well, just in general, because that speaks volumes, and asking those questions as well in interviews, as uncomfortable as it is. And again, it's only in recent times that I would have the confidence to ask anything like that. Whereas before, I think I'd just kind of think, oh gosh, I'm so bloody lucky to get an interview. Let's just not screw this up. Let's not kind of worry about any of the glaring red flags there might be. But I would beseech you, whether you are, and those of you who are kind of long in the game like we are, this, but certainly those of you kind of early on in your career, if your gut is telling you something's off, it probably is.
And that's it. I think that, like you said, now I'm in the game a bit longer. I'm not afraid to ask the difficult questions, and I will ask them. And I quite enjoy it. I like flipping the tables and seeing, because I'm like, I want to be in the right school. I want to give my passion and my all to everything, and I know I'm an asset. But I also want to know, like, where I'm going into, that they know the right things as well. Excuse me. Hang on. Let me just get my Teacher Talk Radio mug and have a sip.
Well, cheers. What are you drinking this evening?
I'm on the water, Lucy. I'm hydrating.
I'm on the before Tom Rogers in the background has an absolute drinking on the job. It's peppermint tea, Rog.
It's just whiskey. That's how we get rid of these colds. But yeah, no, I always now ask. I ask obviously what their wellbeing provisions are for the staff, because if it's like, oh, well, we leave some fruit in the staff room, or whether they actually anything, I want to know how they're looking after their staff. Like a school that I recently, the last school, basically the school I'm at, when I interviewed, they were like, no, we're very family orientated. If you need to do something for your kid, like my son's disabled and has a lot of hospital appointments, so they're like, no, we're family first. Like, if you need to do this, you need to do that, and are really supportive. So that's really was something that really ticked a lot of boxes and was a big decision for me. So kind of asking how they kind of deal with parents, but that's a difficult conversation to have, but it's not a bad one. I had an interview. Sorry, I'm going for it. interview for head of year, and I asked, what are the weaknesses in the current head of year team? Because I was like, because I wanted to know how I could add value to the team. And I was like, because they kept going on about how all the amazing things that they were doing. I was like, what do you think what are the things you need to improve on? What are the weaknesses within that team? And every school should have this. And you could ask it for a school point of view as well. So they should have their action plan. So the areas that they are concentrating on, every school should have that. And that's the advantage of having done my
improvement plan. Yeah, all of that.
My tip is that I now know every single document that every SLT and every school should have, and how they should be written, and how well they should be written, and how like ready and available they should be. So I'm like, I want to know, like, as SLT, they should be able to reel off what their like things they're doing really well are, and what their action points are. Every school should have what their whole school focuses are for that year. And they couldn't answer. They just kept, oh, well, this bit's really good and this bit's really good. I was like, I know they're really good. I'm just asking you what you think still needs work on, because no one's perfect, and I want to know whether they know what their weaknesses are. If they are like, there's nothing wrong, then something's wrong, because they should know.
Or it's done behind, it's done, you know, kind of. But
exactly.
also,
you should be open to your flaws, kind of making sure you should know what you're working on. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. If you're oblivious and you don't know what your flaws are, and you don't know what you're trying to improve as a school, I would run.
But also, Hannah, I think that, you know, when I sort of, my initial reaction was like, oh, that's a bold question. And then I thought, well, hang on a minute. You didn't ask what a person's weakness, you asked what the weaknesses were as a, you know, as the team, as the kind of concept. You're not asking them to drop anybody in it. So, you know, they also, I think, missed an opportunity there to actually, I think they may have, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for them, but maybe there was a kind of misinterpretation of the question. You weren't asking them to throw anybody under the bus. You were merely saying, you know, I'm here and I want to do this, but you kind of need to tell me what I'm going to be doing, or what
I've had other heads answer it beautifully, and it's just really like interesting, like when they've been really kind of articulate about like, right, well, we do this really well, but this is where we're really focusing on, we're really concentrating on, this is what we want to improve as a school. If we nail this, then kind of everything's good, kind of thing. But it is, I think, like I bring this up every week, don't I? Lovely Brian Walton said that like we can't be at level 11 the whole time. We need to do 5 or 6 really well. And actually, it is about kind of juggling and managing that and being able to do it. If everything's all singing and all dancing, I'm like, whoa, who's going to burn out at this school and disappear? Like how many people have you got off long-term sick doing this much, this well, constantly? We don't have enough hours in the day. Like, how long do your staff here for? Like, yeah, if you really want to know a school, I haven't done this, but I've now decided that this is genius, because actually my school, everybody leaves on the dot and I'm like the last person to leave, and I find it absolutely bizarre that I get locked in and I don't feel like I'm even staying late. But yeah, sit outside the school and think, what time will the teachers leave? If everyone leaves like 10-15 minutes after the kids, that's the school you want to be in, isn't it? Like, I'm like, you don't want to be in the school where the car park is full like an hour after school is finished. Just do a little drive by, just double check. Like, genius, isn't it?
This is filling in, this is adding nothing to her whole stalking, sleuthing, snooping.
Stalk your school, stalk it.
Like full on detective. Like she's doing a stakeout. Are we bringing snacks, Hannah?
I mean, I joke that I feel like I was missed an opportunity in my life, that I should have been a spy, because my child has taught me that I apparently do not need sleep. I don't need coffee to stay awake. I'm really good under interrogation, and I'm very good with a rifle. I won one of those giant teddies at the fair, and they told me that only one person wins like once a year, and I did it twice in a row after a couple of beers. So like, CIA, if you're listening, or what is it, FBI, or any of those, if you need
MI5.
me, I'm available. Just saying.
He's just like, I don't know what I bring to this team, to this double act. Every time I sit with you, Anne, I'm like, and what is it? I'm not even the personality hire at this point. Like, I'm just sitting here going, yeah, I can't, not that we're competing or anything silly like that. I can't even match that. Like, what where do I go from here? I don't know. But I'm just along for the ride and I love it. So where did we get to? Sitting outside school, seeing when people leave.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And also things like protected time, PPA time, and asking things about that, because schools
How
are
do
really
you
naughty about
designate
it.
your PPA time? Yeah. Is that
Yeah.
protected? Are staff used for cover? Because I found that really weird going from a school that I was never used for cover, and we would occasionally get an email going, "We're really short. We can't get anybody. Can anybody do this? Is anybody free?" And we'd all be like, "Yeah, I'll go do it." But my current school, like, what are we? We're like 4 weeks in, are we now? Something like that.
5, something like
4 or
that.
5 weeks in. I've already been used cover 4 times.
But you get that time back.
Well, granted, I didn't make it to my cover today because I put on cover and I'm like, sorry, can't make my cover. Kids cut his head open. I've got to go to A&E. I'll be back though. Don't worry. But yeah,
I just love that you went back today.
My 10s and 11s. You know, I know where my heart lies. With my lovely, adorable child that was wrapped up at grandma's house. It's fine.
Yes, just to be clear, everybody, she's a great mum.
Yeah.
So where did we get to? Stalking schools. What else? Oh, protective PPA time. Yes, and the other thing. I mean, we're turning this into a project, aren't we? Look at the bloody marking policy. That's the other thing. Look at the marking policy. I was going to say particularly in primary, but actually across the board, because I've been in schools where I've had a pencil case full of different color pens and still not actually really been clear on what I've had to use any of them for. And I've also been in a no marking school, which I don't think really works either. Maybe this is another show opportunity, Hannah, just whilst we're pondering out loud. But no marking was a weird one, because you would look at 5 books a day and then kind of decide kind of how to progress the class based on those 5 books, which it's another conversation for another time.
Yeah, I've seen that, and then but we had like a chart to fill in, and then we'd put the chart up on the board and base that. But I would generally check more than 5. I feel like 5 is a bit limited. I think like if you're doing something like with maths and you're seeing them like 5 times a week, and you're just doing a quick like, oh, what did everyone get that before the next lesson? That's kind of fine. But like for me, when I only see them once a week, like I wasn't gauging quite enough of the class as to how much I need to then do. But I do think that's really interesting, and I always do it. I do it quite sneakily, but I do it. So I always check the kids' books. So when I'm in a school, if I'm on a tour and I go and they take me into classrooms, I will go and ask the kids questions, and I'll be like, "Can I just have a look at your book?" And I will flick through the kids' books. If I don't have that opportunity on the tour, then I will do it in my lesson when they're on a task. And I'll be like, "Can I just flick through your other stuff? Have you done this kind of thing before?" And I'll have a little flick. And I just think it's really important. You can gauge, because they're not going to give you bottom set really difficult. Well, they might if they're mean. Sometimes I do it. But like, you can kind of suss out a good kid in the class quite quickly. And I'm not mean. I don't go look at the rubbish kids. I sometimes do. I look at a bit of variety, but like you can suss out a good kid and you know what they're capable of, and you can see whether the book is to the quality of the kid. Like, are they, from what you can get out with them, are they kind of producing that? And I feel it's quite interesting kind of look you can get, because that's the thing. I like how like schools do their performance management, I think, is also a good thing. Ask how do you kind of structure your performance management? What is your kind of CPD policy? What kind of things are you focusing on, encouraging your staff to do? Kind of, if you can ask those kind of questions beforehand and then go and look in the kids' books, like, are they doing like challenge? And you can see challenge kind of coming through in the books. Are you working on literacy and presentation? Are there stickers on their books and everything is kind of done that way? Like, I find to see whether what they're saying is in action quite an interesting thing. But like, I'm coming from my SLT hat. Like, how kind of is that all together kind of working? Especially, I think that comes from me a little bit with my national role. I was obviously trained by a lady who was amazing, Chisi Hunsby, who was an officer inspector for 15 years. She was nominated for Global Teacher of the World Award. So watching her go into a school, talk to the SLT and then navigate herself around the school, talk to the kids, talk to the head of departments, talk to the teachers, and see whether they all went in sync. I kind of almost do a little bit of that in an interview because I want to know how succinct everything is. And I think if you can see that in a school, that like what SLT are saying is the same as what the teachers are kind of saying, it's the same as what the kids are saying, and you can see it in their books, then it's a well-oiled machine, and you're like, yes, this is something I want to be part of. This school clearly gets it. There's clear communication throughout, and everything they're trying to put into place is clearly kind of working. They obviously know how to do good implementation, because I think a lot of schools will be like, oh, this is the fad, this is what we're going to do, and it's not necessarily implemented very well, or it's implemented in quite dull CPD on a twilight, and it's not and filtering through. Like, I want to be in a school that's going to really inspire me, not in one where I'm going to sit there going, oh God, not this again. Is that really what you're trying to sell me? Because I've been in this game a long time, and I don't like being that teacher. I don't like being that teacher sat there on an inset or a twilight being like, oh, heard all this before. But I think even like new fads can be delivered in exciting ways, and I think I've seen some people do it amazingly, and I've seen some people do it very poorly, like asking the teachers to do a recap quiz over what we did on the last twilight. I'm like, no, I'm too old for this. This is not something I need to do. I can have a sticker in my book and refer to it, I'm fine, but I don't need to be doing recall for you at the grand old age that I am. So I do think kind of knowing what they do in CPD and what their kind of focus is can kind of give you quite a quick inkling as to whether because basically I'm a teacher geek. I'm here on Teacher Radio talking about teaching. Do they know their educational spiel? I like that one. I ask. This is one I add into every interview I do. I ask the candidate, what was the last educational book you read, and how did you enjoy it? So that's quite an important one. So I always know what book I've read, and if you need to, don't forget. You can go and visit johncatbookshop.com and use the lovely discount code at JCTTR2425 for your 20% off. So like, I just think keeping up with education, making sure you're reading, making sure you're knowledgeable about what CPD is good or a part of CPD that's important to you will make you come across so well in an interview. And I just think if you got asked that question, you're like, I haven't read an educational book. Like, I don't know. Like, if all you're getting is what your school is delivering you on a twilight, and you're not doing anything of your own kind of own professional development in the areas that you like, then you're doing yourself a disservice as a teacher as well. So do go down to John Cat Bookshop and go check out their range of books. There's such a range out there for everybody now, and it's just so interesting and such a wide kind of variety of things to do out there. And if we're talking about John Cat, we shouldn't leave out our lovely reading solutions as well, who the home of Dreambox Reading Plus, the online development program that creates stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to GCSE beyond. And you can use their free pilot month scheme. So give them a search and sign up, because who doesn't love a free scheme? And I think that links in quite well as well, that I would ask them kind of what I always ask them what like registration system they use, because there's some that I just hate, and I'm just like
is that a deal breaker?
I'm just like, well, it's just like, no, it's one of those, like, I'm like, when did you transition to Teams? Because let's face it, everyone's had to move from Google to Teams, and it's hell. Like, what is your computer systems like? I wish I'd asked that question, because as much as I love my school, their internet is horrific, and I've never experienced anything so slow in my life. And
all right, I used to be at a school that ran on household internet, so there you go.
So I'm like, I just wish. It's like, oh, this is the one thing I hate. The one thing I hate is that, like, how slow it is to try and teach on this internet. But I guess it is looking at where the money goes and seeing, like, have they got nice flash new interactive screens, or are they still on the old projectors that don't
Is it one class set of iPads for the entire school?
Yeah.
Blah,
I
blah.
don't know. I don't know
I mean,
whether that should be a factor. You can have lovely, quaint little classes, can't you? But I don't know. There's a lot of factors, because that's the thing. I'm flipping this conversation because I know like it should be about like interviewing as in like what you can do to impress them, but actually I think it's just as important that you interview the school as much as they're interviewing you. This is a 50-50 process. It's not a kind of you have to sell yourself, and
it takes chutzpah to do, like, to some of the things we're saying. I mean, and I know we've sort of said the same thing in that as an ECT NQT, did I have the foresight or the experience to ask these questions, or even the kind of the proverbial balls to lady balls to ask these questions? No, I didn't. But do I now? Hell yeah, I do. Like there are things that have happened to me across my career, and I know you and I have talked about this at length as well, where we've gone, oh, that shouldn't have happened. Oh, make a mental note of that to make sure that as and when or if I'm ever interviewing again, to be damn clear that I will not put up with certain things. So yeah, I do agree with you that it is because at the end of the day, this is going to be somewhere you are spending a hell of a lot of time. Like it's not the kind of 9 to 3 job, as I mean, again, we're preaching to the converted, but it's you've got to kind of walk in there and know that when you're kind of going to work every day, or when you turn up there, that you can do it, that you can be there for a period of time, and that it does fit with you, and having a word with yourself as well about, I mean, I always sort of, I know people groan when they kind of, oh, what's your teaching philosophy? What do you think makes a good teacher? But as much as those are kind of, and they are the kinds of questions you are going to get asked, and you're kind of like, oh God, that's a bit unoriginal. It is, but have this conversation with yourself. Write these things down, have a ponder, do some reading, because I guarantee you, my philosophy is very different to Hannah's, and we might align on some things, but we also teach very different things. So, what kind of my approach to something would be vastly different to Hannah's, and vice versa. So I do think a degree, and certainly this takes time to develop as well, because as an NQT, ECT, you might not necessarily be clear on what your philosophy is or what it is you value, but do think about it, because if you're not sure, if you're a bit kind of that, it'll come through when you're asked those questions.
And I think like a good one as well is to do the journey at the time that you would be going to and from school, to know whether that fits in with your lifestyle. Is it a good journey? Are you happy to get up at that time? Are you actually, that's a bit further than I think it is in my head, and actually that would mean that I'm in the car for an extra hour a day or an extra half an hour a day? Is that going to do well for my work-life balance, or is actually this school going to be better, but I'm going to be driving for longer? Like little things like that, I think are quite kind of important. And like you said about kind of the difficult conversations and things, like we had our women in education kind of show that we did a couple of weeks ago. Excuse me tonight. And I did say on there, like, I have been in an interview where I didn't ask for a pay rise in the interview. I had been an instructor for 3 years and then got qualified. And then I naively didn't realize that you could negotiate. So I just went onto the pay scale and actually got paid less than I did as an instructor. And then when I moved schools, I was so excited that I got the job. I was just absolutely livid and myself that I was so overwhelmed and so happy to have got the job. I was like, yes, this is the best day ever. And then I went to them like, oh, but previously I was on this, but I've got this number of years experience. Can I go onto this pay scale instead? And they went, no. And I was like, I've even looked at, like, I'd have to move my child's nursery and the childcare is like £10 more a day. Is there any way you would consider it? And they were like, no. And then to be in an interview a couple of years later in the same school is one of the interviewers, and somebody in the same position that was a man had that conversation and went, can I go up 2 pay scales? And they went, yeah, no problem. But he had the balls to do it in the interview when he knew that he was kind of the best candidate and the last candidate. And he got the yes. So like, but again, that was naivety on my part, because bless my mother, she's getting lots of shouts out today, but she'd been in education a long time. But in her day, you just went up the pay scale, and that was what was done. So that's what I'd been told by her, and I didn't really ask around, and that's what I thought happened. I didn't realize I could go up too. And same as when I left, the guy who negotiated, because I got the job a couple of days before half term. We had an NQT, a trainee at our school, and they were like, "Will you stay?" And he went, "I'll stay, but you have to put me up 2 pay scales." So he had the balls to ask for it, and they gave it to him. And I was like, "You're a trainee, and you're literally going to go up to this amount? Like, that's not really fair." But also, he's played the game, so fair play. Like, you've.
I mean,
Yeah.
that takes some gall, I have to say. You know, as a trainee, to say, right, I want to go up.
He'd been offered another job somewhere else, so they were like, "You don't go to that job, stay here." So he knew he had options. So he's like, he knew how desperately he needed somebody. But yeah, so it's a game when you get to that point. But like, I'm not that type of person, and like I said, I thought once I took the department from -1.15 to plus over 1. I thought we might then get the performance related double pay rise, but no, they still refused. But yeah, who have we got with JBL?
Yeah. Weeks to prepare. Not sure what that was related to. Also, we've got one from Jessie Moore, who's saying lesson learned. I'm not sure again what that's referring to. So Jessie, come back to us as well, because we got chatting and then sort of ignored our comments. Very naughty. Right. As we're kind of closing in on the last half hour of this, I kind of want to change the conversation slightly, and I want to get into story time, because I like story time. I want to know, Hannah, let's start with questions, because interview questions, and I have a real thing about this. Like, there's nothing worse in my mind than being asked, "Tell us about yourself." Ugh, why? Ugh. Questions like that just make me cringe. As much as the teaching philosophy one makes me cringe, we've already talked about why that's important. What makes an outstanding teacher? Because again, that varies as well. I hate that question. But what's the worst question you've ever been asked in an interview?
I mean, I quite regularly get asked, like, what's my weakness, or what's something they should know about me that isn't good. I can't even remember how they phrased it. But yeah, like, I remember on one of them, I just went, "Well, I'm incapable of saying no. I just basically people please and will do whatever you want at my own demise." But basically, I'm really working on it. I'm trying to say no. Needless to say, I didn't get that job. And then I had another one where I was like, I'm like, I am really good at my job, but I'm a little bit messy. Like, it comes hand in hand, the art teachers and the creativity that comes with creativity, and ADHD means I'm a little bit messy. But I could hide in my classroom, and I could have a beautiful classroom, or I could spend those minutes with the children making a difference. And I would much rather spend that time getting a child a higher grade in their GCSE. And literally now, every time they walked into my classroom, they're like, "It's a bit messy." I'm like, "Well, I told you at interview, I pre-warned you that this was going to happen. Like, you can't say anything. This was you knew." But yeah, but that did throw me a little bit. But I've had that one a couple of times. But I always go rogue on my answers.
But there's never one where you've just gone, "Oh God, I've got absolutely no idea," or just actually kind of, because I mean, you say you hold up onto torture. I wouldn't. We've talked about subtitle face. Like, my face has subtitles. And so if I'm kind of icked by a question or irked by a question, whatever it is, I have a real tough time kind of not showing it. But are there any ones where you're just like, "Oh gosh, this is so tired, you need to retire this"?
I quite often have it, like, if there's a question that I don't quite understand or need a bit longer because I can't think of an answer, I just ask them to repeat the question. Is quite a good tip to kind of give you that extra moment just to think before you answer. But I can't, no, my brain's gone blank, because I've definitely had some corkers. But yeah,
I heard about one, which was, I believe, for a school somewhere here that shall remain nameless. That was, and it wasn't me that was asked this. It was a friend. Teach me something I can't Google.
Yeah. No.
I mean, the only thing I came up with, which I suppose is a bit self-indulgent, narcissistic, is I can teach you about me, because you can't really. Well, I suppose you could. Well, I suppose you could.
Bravo.
how exposed your social media is, but I just wouldn't know. I mean, if anyone else has got a decent answer to that, JBL or Jessie, if you're listening in, teach me something I can't Google. What would your answers be to that one? Did any other listeners out there? Because I'd love to know what a witty response to that would be. Okay, let's flip it. Some really, I mean, it's a funny one to ask, but some really good questions, or questions where you've gone, I like that, or where you've gone, do you know what? They've thought about this, or you've been really impressed with your own answer.
Oh gosh, I like literally my mind's gone blank on interview questions, but I do like I said, I do like something about kind of CPD, like what was the last kind of CPD that you did that was really good. I do think kind of knowing where your weaknesses are and like what area of your teaching would you most like to kind of improve are kind of good questions. But I think they should be questioned. I don't think that they should be generic questions that you ask kind of every subject. I do think you should have them a little bit kind of bespoke to your kind of job. And so I think very much kind of, for me, it would be like, what other teachers are you inspired by in the art world? Where do you get support? Because I found it really weird that like somebody got a job over me but didn't know what NSEAD was, which is the union for the art teachers, which is where like all the courses and everything come from. And I'm like, how can you say you're like a knowledgeable art teacher but don't know like quite a basic place to go and get all of your knowledge from? Is quite interesting. And the other one, my old head, who I really respected, they get to a point in their questions and their last question is always like, are you still a firm candidate for this job?
That irritates me so much.
I quite like it because I'm like, that's my point where I can go, nope. Or like, I like the fact that they kind of want to know that you're still interested.
It's a trap. Would you take this job if you were offered it? Well,
yeah.
I mean, the thing is, you know, it's a difficult one because on the one hand, you're like, well, I wouldn't be bloody sitting here if I didn't have an intention of taking the job. But then if you've kind of gone through the process and you're thinking, I would genuinely rather gouge my eyes out with a rusty spoon than take this job, then you're also trapped because what do you do? What do you do? Oh, thanks, JB. I was like the answer to my Google question. That's really unhelpful.
The other one, which I find is a little bit of a trap, but quite interesting if you can nail it, is when, like, in the interview at the end, when you've done everything on the day, it's like, what do you think of the school having now been in it? What's your opinion of it? And what's your views of it to see whether it matches kind of what the school are trying to project is quite an interesting one. But I find that one quite difficult to answer.
Because you've got to, you can't sound like a kiss ass, can you? You've got to do it.
No.
You've got to be nice enough that you don't offend anybody, but sort of not so kind of, oh, well, I just think, you know, if I had my own children, I'd send them here. It's, you got to be a little
That is a good question to ask yourself as you are going through the interview process and stuff. Would you send your kid there? Because actually the answer is no. Do you really want to teach there? No. And that actually was a good selling point of the last school I accepted. As we went round, the head pointed out, we bumped into staff members and literally pointed out, this member of staff, student, their child goes to this school. And so that was quite interesting that was a bit of a selling point, that then the staff was like, no, I really enjoy it. I didn't want to send my child anywhere else and they're thriving kind of. And I was like, I it's not till now we've talked about that. And I'm like, oh, that was a good selling ploy. I enjoyed that. I fell for that.
But that doesn't, I mean, interestingly, it doesn't really work at international school because a lot of I don't know if this is true everywhere, but for those international teachers listening, your kids tend to attend the school you teach at for free. So it's not really a ringing endorsement either way. It's not. I mean, you know, it's free education of whatever caliber is being delivered at that particular establishment. But yeah, but I do think at a state school or in the public system, it is far more of an endorsement because, you know, there are choices there. In terms of the best question I was ever asked, and interestingly, this interview it's actually how I ended up in Portugal, so I'll try and kind of condense it down as best as I can. But the original head teacher of this school, I'd stalked him for months, and I actually think he only eventually gave me a job to shut me up and leave, and so I leave him alone. But so this was just as the world was shutting down for lockdown, and so I was. He was meant to come to London and do interviews that way. And, you know, he meant to take a portfolio of work with you and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he didn't manage to fly to London because Europe was shutting. I think at this point, the UK was the only country that was still, that everything was still pretending to be normal, of course. And it ended up being a Skype interview. This was before we knew about Zoom and everything else. And I thought, surely, you know, he's not going to give me a job based on a Skype interview when we haven't even been in the same room, let alone does he know anything about me, my ability to teach, nothing. You know, I don't know how this is going to go. But my favorite question, and apparently he's always asked this, is what's the most important resource in a classroom?
Yeah, I have had that one before.
Yeah, I really like it as a question. I said the teacher, and I then said something about children, but I said the teacher because, and I can't quite remember the exact thing I gave, but it's like, you know, you can have the tech and all the kind of resources and all the bits, bots and the others, but if you've got a teacher and a group of children, you can teach.
Me. I'm the best resource. But it's interesting that you said about the portfolio, because from an art teacher's point of view, we get asked to take portfolios all the time, and I hate it. I'm just like, why? Like, those that can't teach, don't you remember? Like, I can draw, like, every now and then, and I can draw very well. I've got beautiful drawings on my walls just to show the kids that I can actually do it under the visualizer. I'm like, look at that. And then I'll like literally milk that picture for about a year, and then I'll do it again next year. But it's like, why am I taking a portfolio? Because I know how to do art. Like, I'd much rather take a portfolio. I put like pictures of kids' works and competitions that they've won and exhibitions that I've run and the retweets. Like, I've had the Tate Modern share my scheme of work because they thought it was a really great way of learning about art history. Like, things like that I've put in there. But like, I'm like, what? I don't get what you gain from a portfolio unless you're not asking the right questions. I do prefer, like, this is quite an interesting one. I don't know whether it's an art one, but quite often I get asked to bring students books, which is a bit dodgy taking books outside of school. But I have a collection of books that they're old books that kids didn't take with them. But I take one from each year group, and they can flick through and see what the quality of work of the kids that of the lessons that I teach. And again, it's like one of those, like, I go in and look at their books, but like, are they looking at mine and going, yeah, that's what ours should look like? So I do think, like, actually taking some kids' books and showing them what your lessons look like and showing off in that respect. And I have had it where I've made portfolios because they said it and they haven't even asked to look at them. And I'm like, and when they go, have you got any questions? Like, I don't have any questions, but I want to show you this. And I'll get out my lovely book and I'll show them everything that I've got in there. Like, this is what I've done. I've created these starter books because I've done this. This is how I quiz. This is how I recap. This is how I assess. This is how I do this. These are all the competitions my kids have won. And then it's like, so don't be afraid to show off and just be like, if they don't ask you the questions that don't show how good you are, make sure you kind of show it off yourself. Use that kind of every other question at the end. Oh, Paul's given us an interesting one. So
it's a two-part of this.
A fellow long-term supply teacher refused to tell me what they were asked in their interview for a permanent job. There were 2 jobs and 2 internal applicants, us. That's, yeah. So I think...
Hang on, there's more.
Oh, it ended up being about the Sermon on the Mount. I got the job and they didn't. The board had heard about them not sharing the information she knew. Not a team player. Oh, I'm so glad that's the outcome of that. Because I just think that it's like how people react is really interesting, which is why I find it, I like chucking them in the staff room and kind of seeing how they interact and knowing how they interact with each other. Like I try and be really positive and friendly with the other people in the room with me. When it was at that school that I had the weird interview where we were there like all day, one of the other chaps had flown over from Holland or something for the day. There was another woman up there that was relocating from a county below and had been a head of department, was very experienced. There was another girl that had got a couple of years on me. I had literally done my instructing for 3 years and got my qualification and was still early doors. And literally the guy turned around to me and went, "Today's good experience for you, isn't it?"
That's
and
so rude.
I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to get this look at everyone's experience. Like he clearly knows, he's clearly had a really great day. And then it was me that got the job over him.
We love to hear it.
So it was, I quite enjoyed getting that one. But again, it was a weird one because there was me and one other girl left at the end. And because it had been such a long day, they were like, just go when you finish your interview. But then when it was me, there was one person after me and they went, "Oh, just hang around if you want at the end." So I kind of, my friend worked in a different part of the school. So I went and saw her. And when the other girl said, "Oh, how do you interview go?" I was like, "Oh yeah, it went well. This is like just hang around if we want to find out how the day went." And she went, "Oh, that means you've got it. Oh, there's no point in me even going in and interviewing." And I was like, "Oh, I'm like, this is my my second interview. I didn't know that. I didn't mean to do that. But also, you don't know that they could just be polite and don't read it the wrong way and don't go into. I may have thrown her off and I did not mean to because she was actually the nicer one of the people that I had that day. And same as when I got into teaching a very weird way. In the fact I was doing my masters, obviously my mum's a teacher, sister's a teacher. I was like, don't want to do that. And then when I did my masters with a load of teachers, I went, oh, maybe I will. And I started applying, and one of them was a maternity job. But because I got my masters, I could go in as an instructor. And we got invited in for this day, and we didn't realise there was 2 jobs, but they kind of advertised it as one. But they were interviewing like 6 of us, and I was like, there's a lot. Is this normal? There's a lot of us. And I'd never taught a lesson in my life. Obviously, my mother has prepped me. Bear in mind, she was primary and I was going in for a secondary art school job. But we planned the lesson together. We wrote our lesson plan together. She taught me how to write a lesson plan. I went in and taught that lesson. I was like, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. Why didn't I listen to my mother and sister and do this sooner? I loved that. But also, I was up against like supply teachers, retired teachers. I was up against I was the only unqualified person there. And I was like, what am I doing here? I've got absolutely zero chance. But apparently I interviewed, there was 2 jobs. So 2 teachers were going on maternity leave. One was full-time and one was part-time. And they liked me so much. They wanted me for the full-time role. But that was the head of art. But the head of DT went, she's not taught a day in her life. So give her the part-time one and we'll give her the full-time to somebody that's actually taught before. And actually I just fell in love with it to the point where the kids protested before I left so that they didn't want me to leave. So they kept me in a little capacity, and then the other teacher got pregnant. So where I kind of ended up staying for like multiple reasons, kind of waiting whilst everyone got pregnant, and then nobody else would, so I had to leave. But like it is like, don't just because, as my mum always said as well, if you go into like as an ECT or like an instructor, she's like, don't like feel inadequate compared to people with experience, because let's face it, you're cheap. They love a little bit of cheap. If you're good and cheap, they'll take you. So
how is that you calling yourself cheap?
I'm not now. Now I'm screwed. Now I'm bloody expensive. So nobody wants me.
I know. We're stuffed like over a decade in the game. Oh yeah. So Leanne has just said, mums always know. So Hannah, you got mummed there.
I did. We always know.
And JBL is in agreement.
Like she needs to come back on again soon. It's been a while.
Who? Your mum?
Yeah,
bring her back. That honestly, I know we've already endorsed that show where you had literally everybody on. I think your sister was there, your mum was there.
Yeah, That was
Your
that was Teaching the Family Part 2. I had my nephew and my niece there, who's now gone on to coaching little tots. He's doing like rugby totty type things and teaching little tot. I was like, oh, he's getting closer. He's getting closer. He will end up in education.
Oh my God, it's when it's in your family like that. I think it just, and it's a positive thing. I think it's so lovely. So yeah, I'm sure you'll be on to him, or indeed your sister will be on to him before he knows it. And we need, I mean, I know we've done kind of ranty feminist things, but we do need good male primary teachers as well. Much as I don't want to fight them for jobs and promotions, but hey ho. The Wilson Education sorry, I
was like pressing the button, like, get that up. Yes, that's gonna be the next trust. It'll be the best trust in the world, obviously.
I'm coming to work for you. I think we know what we need to do next here, Hannah. I think this is really just, let's just make it happen. Let's just, your own education trust, get those of us involved who want to be, who want to do kind of creative, fun things. I'm here for it. I'm in. Pick me.
I do think, talking about trust though, trust is quite a big one with jobs. So finding out about the trust that you're going to join, because sometimes the school is beyond the school's kind of scope, and actually asking how involved is the trust, how involved are they, is there a good network, have they got good kind of subject leads within the trust. I find that bit quite interesting, because even like I left a trust and then went to another trust and then went back to the trust and it's like they do change and they are different, and different trusts run in different ways, and some are very rigid and some aren't. Some are very prescriptive. So actually, if you're somebody that doesn't like teaching a central curriculum, but that's what that trust is saying, then that's not going to be the school for you. So digging a little bit and asking about the trust as a whole and how they support the staff, but also what's kind of expected in terms of how you teach across the trust is quite interesting. And I don't think that kind of thing is spoken about as much in interviews as it should be.
No, I think you're probably right, and it goes back to that whole thing of go into full-on stalker mode. If you want to do a stakeout with Hannah, apparently she has good snacks. So
yeah. I mean, we're going back a bit, but Paul popped up an nice question when I was ranting. But what are the top reasons for saying no to a job offer? Have you ever said no to a job offer?
Have I ever said no? I mean, a recent one doesn't really count. It was kind of a maternity cover, and it was in EYFS. I don't have early years experience, and so I withdrew my application. I didn't actually say no to the job, so that doesn't really count. I haven't sort of officially, but again, early on in my career, like even up to 2-3 years ago, I think I'd have really struggled to. Now, absolutely no problem.
And I think I'm a bit like that now. It's one of those, I get overwhelmed and very flattered, and then but sometimes I think it's okay to say, I'm going to sleep on it and let you know tomorrow, because I think actually sitting down and weighing it out, and I've done that more recently, where I've literally sat down, kind of really gone through it, thought about how will this change my life, and how is this going to impact me on a day-to-day basis, kind of talk to all of my family, talk to all of my friends, and really made sure it's the right decision for me, and get advice. I think sometimes when we're in that situation and we're offered it, and then it's like, okay, I'm just going to say yes, but actually I haven't really decompressed from the day and reflected and thought about the whole excitement of the day, and actually kind of sat down and gone, right, how did that day go? Because actually I think subconsciously sometimes we pick up on things, and it's not till like a little while later that you're like, oh, actually kind of that wasn't quite right and that wasn't quite right. We're kind of fueled by the adrenaline of the day, and I think sometimes just taking that little moment, just be like, I just need to sit and figure it out and mathematically work it out, and things like that can be quite interesting. And also, if they promise you stuff, make sure you get that written down. I've made that mistake a lot of times because I'm really gullible, but I just believe people are good. And
you believe in people, Hannah, and you're trusting. I think it's unfair on yourself, because I think, you know, by the very nature of being teachers, we want to help. We want to make people happy. We want to kind of create safe space. And so, you know, there is a little bit of when you're kind of not quite promised the moon on a stick necessarily, but when you're told that certain things are going to happen and then they don't, it's crap.
Yeah, if they promise you they're going to put you on X, Y, or Z training program or do this or X or Y, like I would get that put in writing or have it in an email. I've made the mistake too many times of them being in a phone call conversation and then having no evidence and then all be just constantly, oh yeah, no, soon, oh soon. And it's like, this is kind of what you promised me. And that's the thing, and if that doesn't happen, as a school, you're then letting that person down, and it's changing their opinion of the school as well. And actually, you want happy staff that feel supported, that feel like they can grow. So I do think like asking about like what the development programs are that they have to offer, especially like across the trust, like are there kind of networking opportunities to grow and do courses, like I know MPQs and things like that are kind of going out. Obviously, I've done the senior leadership course that I thoroughly enjoy, but like we both said this before, that we quite often find our courses off our own back. Like if a school is saying they we offer this to our staff and this to our staff, then like I'd be like all over that as a school, because I just think the school that encourages your staff to go and learn and thrive is the school you want to be at. And also as a school, like also there is the awkward thing, isn't it, with teaching, we have to give our notice half a term in. And I think as teachers, if you can, obviously some interviews come quite late in the day, so you can't hand your notice until quite late, but I do think you have to be respectful and make sure that the school are given adequate time to
100%.
replace you, because I think if you don't, it's not about the school, it's not about the people, it's about the kids, and everything should be about the kids. And I do feel like I always try and ask a question about that, because I was instilled that at a very early age, that in teaching everything is about the kids. Like if it's not about, if the school is all about looking good at Ofsted reports, it's not the right school. Everything should come down to how we support and how we help and how we encourage our kids to be better people. It's not about results, it's about having a really good support system and really educating and challenging and stretching and building great kids. And that should be kind of what you look for and what a school should be doing. And I think kind of being respectful of your own school, being respectful of the kids, that you don't want them to be screwed over and having cover for X, Y, and Z because you went, oh no, I'm going to hand it on the last day. And I have known teachers to do that, and I just don't really necessarily respect that. I get the urge to, I see it, but I do think we kind of need to be a little bit respectful with that. And I also think as a head, if somebody does hand in their notice, you kind of have to, especially if it's promotion, you have to be pleased for them. Like I've had a head kind of say to me, like, I'm gutted you're going, but I'm so excited for you. And actually that was literally,
that's all you need.
Made me so happy, and actually really respect them. And I think that's kind of how it should be in leadership. It shouldn't be like, oh my God, you're leaving. It should be like, I'm really happy for you that you're going to do something that you love, or how lucky they are to have you. It shouldn't be this kind of bitter experience kind of thing.
Oh no. And just emphasizing your point, we've all fantasized about the grand kind of FU, you know, the kind of that Bridget Jones moment where she tells Daniel Cleaver she'd rather have a job wiping Saddam Hussein's backside than working one more moment next to him. And believe me, in your head, it sounds great. And you know, but, you know, when you do kind of move on, burning your bridges, however much you feel, and we've all been there, however much you feel you have been wronged, and chances are you have been, you know, it all kinds of stuff goes down in these places, in the working world in general. But yeah, I agree with you, Hannah. Do not burn your bridges. The school community, particularly in trust and all that, it's a lot smaller than you think. These head teachers.
I've got a corker on that. I've completely forgotten about that. I hired somebody for a job in my department, and they didn't sign their contract, and we kept chasing them. And they were like, no, they told us a real sob story about how they were cutting the department and they were going to make one of the staff members redundant. There was only going to be one position, and both teachers had to apply for it. And this girl had applied for our job at the same time, and she's like, I just feel really stressed that I'm going to lose my job. I love teaching, all this stuff. And she was a good teacher, but there was another really experienced teacher, but we were a little bit like, I was a bit younger than him at the time, and I was like, I don't know quite how well I'm going to be able to manage him because he is far more experienced than me, and I don't know whether he'll necessarily listen to my vision with his own vision. So we went for this younger teacher because she was very good in her own merit, and she accepted the job. She kept telling us that she was just waiting for X, Y, and Z and would sign the contracts, and kept fobbing us off. Went for another interview, took the post, to then ring our head and say she got a head of department job at another school. Turned out wasn't a head of department job. It was my old job at my old school prior to thing. And I rang my friend, went, hang on, was they called this? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, no, I hired her and it wasn't the head of department job. And I would have never hired her if I'd known that she'd accepted your job. Because that's really bad form. But now everybody knows her, and no, none of my friends will touch her. And it's like a small community teaching, and everybody knows everybody. So it is like, yeah, you never know when you might need to go back somewhere where you'll bump into them. You don't want to leave like a bitter taste and kind of it not be nice end. And at the end of the day, like, the only person you're screwing over is the kids, because they're the ones that are going to have the cover and the not so good lessons, and it's not fair on them. So make sure you leave a situation as best as you can, as I say.
Yeah. Sometimes leaving partway through a year can't be helped, but by and large, and again, it's the trouble with our profession is that, you know, you do kind of, there is a sort of part of your brain, or certainly my brain, it might not be every teacher's brain, where, you know, see it through. And that's why, you know, when I left my job in the summer, it was important to me to see through the rest of the academic year, irrespective of, you know, how I was feeling about everything and all the rest of it, and mental health and the such. Like, I was like, no, I will see it through to the end. But of course, you know, things can happen and all the rest of it.
That's it. But also don't feel that you, like, I spoke to Tom when I was in quite a toxic school, and I was like, I'm just going to see out the year. I'll just see out these year 11s. And he's like, stop it. Just go now. If you see something now, go now. You do not have to finish out the end of the year. If you are unhappy and they don't appreciate you, you don't owe a school to see out a year, and those kids will be resilient. They'll be okay. Because I put in my old trainee and I taught her, so they were amazing. So like, it is that. But talking of Tom, I'm getting stick on Twitter. Apparently I love what kind of biscuit would you be from a student panel? I did not say I would love that. I said I loved a student panel, but I prefer more interesting questions, like kind of who inspired me and what I like to do. Give me stick. But on the other hand, I do like this as an ender from Christopher. He reckons all in-tray tasks should be replaced with a 30-minute timed game of Escape from Atlantis. This would soon flag up the character core traits of every participant and identify how they make decisions. Right. He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
I think we might have to. That might have to be the point of no return now. At this point,
I've lost Lucy. She's gone.
Say that again.
She's back. Yeah, we lost you. Say that again.
No, I was just going to say, I think that just from you reading that last little bit on Twitter, I think that might be where we should end, because that's just the point. I can't again, Hannah. You've trounced me. I can't come back from that. I now want a biscuit, and I don't think I have any. Which is
but what
upsetting to me.
I feel like there has to be some kind of. I don't like the biscuit question, because I'm like, I don't know what biscuit I would be. I don't like. I like if there's a clever, intelligent answer to a question. There has to be a question that, like, there's a good answer to it. If that makes sense. If there's a good answer, I like it. But there shouldn't be like. And the answer shouldn't be that no matter what they say, it doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? There should be purpose behind it.
JBL's off for a cookie, apparently. He's just said.
Thanks, JBL. But a big thank you again for our sponsors as well. We've got Reading Solutions UK. So Reading Solutions UK is the home of Dreambox Reading Plus. The online reading development program creates stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 and beyond. GCSE Reading Plus evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try their program with a 4-week pilot today. Just search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot. And obviously now you all need to run out and buy your books so you know what you're going to say in your interview when they ask you what educational book you're reading. And you can do that over at our lovely sponsors at John Catt. So this show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publisher of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. So I feel like, what more could you want?
Right, Hannah, speaking of our dearly beloved Tom Rogers, we're being told to bog off because the lovely Danielle is starting over on Podbean for her debut show this evening. I'm not quite sure what her topic is, but if you I can't even speak anymore. If you're in the mood for more TTR content, then do go and have a listen to her. I'm sure she will do a stunning job. So good luck, Danielle, and we will pop over to listen to you in a moment. Hannah, as always, it's been an honor and a privilege.
Always. But I feel like we're getting kicked off next week. Is Tom taking our slot next week, I believe?
I don't know.
So if you come logging in this time next week looking for us lovely too, you might be in for a little bit of a shock.
I think Reading Solutions are coming on.
Yes. So I was going to say, it'll still be a good show with lovely Reading Solutions. So if us chatting about them tonight has made you want to know more about them, so do kind of pencil that one in and come and have a listen. So if not, we'll be back at some point. And so if you'd like to be on our show and come and be a guest, then do drop us a message because we love having you lot on. It's great fun. So enjoy your biscuits and we will speak to you all soon.
Bye.
Outstanding and world-class vision, world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused